I'm Madison Bailey, 28, working the front desk at Meridian Hotels for 5 years now. I learned American Sign Language in college because of my deaf roommate. That random Monday morning was chaotic as usual, suits everywhere, phones ringing off the hook. Then I spotted her, an elegant woman with frustrated eyes, struggling to communicate with Kevin at the desk. I had no clue that the next 60 seconds would completely transform my career and life. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and stick around to see how one small act of kindness created a ripple effect I never saw coming. 5 years. That's how long I'd been standing behind the glossy mahogany front desk at Meridian Hotels. 5 years of the same routine, greeting guests with the same scripted welcome, processing the same check-ins, answering the same questions about breakfast hours and Wi-Fi passwords. 5 years of watching others climb the corporate ladder while I remained firmly planted on the ground floor. It wasn't for lack of trying. I'd applied for the assistant manager position twice in the past 18 months. Both times, I sat through the interviews with perfect posture and rehearsed answers, only to receive the same sympathetic rejection. We've decided to go with someone with more leadership experience. Translation: we're promoting the regional manager's nephew again. The financial pressure was becoming unbearable. My student loans from my hospitality management degree loomed over me like a storm cloud. My apartment in downtown Seattle ate nearly 60% of my paycheck, but moving wasn't an option. My mother lived just 10 blocks away, and with her arthritis worsening, I needed to stay close. She'd sacrificed everything to raise me alone after Dad left, and now it was my turn to help her. Another day in paradise, my coworker Alicia sang as she clocked in beside me. She was the one bright spot in this place, genuinely kind in an environment that rewarded phoniness. Is Derek on the warpath again? I asked, referring to our perpetually dissatisfied front office manager. When isn't he? Apparently, corporate sent another memo about the guest satisfaction scores. We're down 3% this quarter. I sighed. Did they mention that might have something to do with the cut in housekeeping staff and the broken elevator that's been out of service for 2 weeks? Alicia rolled her eyes. You know that's not how it works. It's clearly our attitudes that need adjusting. The R was generous. Derek had singled me out in the last staff meeting, suggesting that perhaps I wasn't projecting enough enthusiasm during check-ins. As if enthusiasm would fix the plumbing issues in rooms 310 through 318. What Derek and the rest of management didn't understand, or chose to ignore, was that I genuinely cared about languages and communication. It wasn't just my hospitality degree. I had minored in linguistics because I was fascinated by how people connect through words. I spoke conversational Spanish and French, which had proven useful countless times with international guests. But my favorite language wasn't spoken at all. I learned American Sign Language during my sophomore year of college, when I was randomly assigned to room with Stephanie Chan. She was profoundly deaf from birth, wickedly smart, and endlessly patient with my clumsy initial attempts to sign. By the end of that year, we could have rapid-fire conversations about everything from philosophy to the ridiculous dating scene on campus. After graduation, we drifted apart geographically, but I kept up with ASL through online communities and local meetups. There was something beautiful about a language you could see rather than hear, the expressiveness, the incorporation of space and movement. In a strange way, signing felt more honest than speaking. Your whole body participated in the communication. None of that mattered at Meridian, of course. My languages were noted in my file somewhere, but rarely utilized beyond occasional translations for tourists. The hotel valued efficiency over connection. Get them checked in, get them out, minimize interaction time to maximize productivity. The atmosphere had grown even tenser in the past 2 weeks after the regional office announced a strategic restructuring initiative. Corporate speak for potential layoffs. Everyone was on edge, wondering where the axe might fall. The rumor mill suggested our property might be targeted for significant changes due to our slipping performance metrics. That Monday morning had started like any other. I had arrived at 6:45 a.m. for my 7 o'clock shift, changed into my burgundy blazer with the gold Meridian crest, and stationed myself at the rightmost computer terminal. The lobby was unusually busy. A tech conference had brought in several corporate groups, and the morning rush of business travelers checking out created a steady stream of activity. Kevin, who worked the terminal next to mine, was in rare form, which is to say, especially unhelpful. He had a talent for looking extremely busy while accomplishing very little, leaving others to pick up the slack. He was also Derek's favorite, perhaps because he never questioned anything or offered suggestions for improvement. "Heads up," Alicia whispered as she passed behind me. "Apparently some VIPs are coming through today. Corporate types evaluating something. Derek's been polishing the same spot on the concierge desk for 20 minutes. Great. Nothing improved workplace morale like being scrutinized by faceless executives who would judge our worth based on a 30-minute observation." I forced my customer service smile back into place as the automatic doors slid open, revealing the next arrival. Something about her immediately caught my attention. She stood out the moment she entered the lobby. It wasn't just her impeccable appearance, though that was certainly striking. In her early 40s perhaps, she wore a tailored charcoal suit with subtle pinstripes, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek low bun. Her jewelry was minimal, but clearly expensive, small diamond studs, a simple platinum watch. She carried a leather portfolio and a compact carry-on suitcase. What caught my attention wasn't her professional polish, but rather how she was scanning the lobby. There was an intense focus in her eyes. She wasn't casually observing, but actively reading her environment, taking in details with deliberate attention. I recognized that concentrated gaze from my college days with Stephanie. The woman approached Kevin's station, setting down her portfolio. I couldn't hear their exchange from my position, but I could see Kevin's expression shift from his practiced welcome smile to confusion, then poorly masked impatience. The woman was gesturing toward a notebook she'd pulled out, writing something down and sliding it across the counter. Kevin's body language became increasingly tense. He spoke louder, that instinctive, useless response people often have when facing a communication barrier. The woman shook her head slightly, pointing to her ear and then making a cutting motion with her hand, the universal sign for "I can't hear you." Instead of adapting, Kevin only grew more flustered. He started over-enunciating his words, leaning forward aggressively as if physical proximity might somehow transmit sound more effectively. The woman's professional composure remained intact, but I could see frustration in the tightening around her eyes, the slight clench of her jaw. I glanced around. The lobby was still busy, but my line had momentarily cleared. Derek was nowhere to be seen, probably briefing the housekeeping staff about the VIP visits. Alicia was on the phone with what sounded like a complicated reservation issue. I shouldn't intervene. Kevin was territorial about his guests, and stepping in would likely trigger another passive-aggressive comment about me overstepping boundaries. Plus, there was the whole corporate evaluation happening today. Drawing attention to a colleague's shortcoming probably wasn't the best political move. But watching the interaction was physically painful. The woman was clearly an experienced business traveler who simply needed efficient service, not a communications ordeal. And Kevin's increasingly visible frustration was bordering on disrespectful. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was moving around the counter. "Excuse me," I said to Kevin. "I can help here if you'd like to take the next guest." His relief barely masked his annoyance. "She's deaf or something. Keeps writing everything down." He said this loudly, as if the woman's hearing was the problem rather than his complete lack of adaptability. I turned to face the woman directly, making sure she could see my hands clearly. "Hello," I signed. "My name is Madison. Welcome to Meridian Hotel. How can I help you today?" The transformation in her expression was immediate and profound. The tension around her eyes relaxed, replaced by surprise and then visible relief. Her hands moved in response, quick and graceful. "Thank you," she signed back. "I'm relieved someone here signs. I'm checking in for 3 nights. Reservation under Rachel Winter." I nodded and moved back to my terminal, gesturing for her to follow me while Kevin retreated to help another guest. As I typed her name into the system, I continued our signed conversation. "I found your reservation. You're here for the Tech Forward conference." "Yes," she responded. "I'm presenting on the second day." This is my first time at this property. Is there good access to public transportation nearby? As I processed her check-in, we maintained an easy flow of conversation in ASL. I explained the light rail station was 2 blocks east, recommended a few deaf-friendly restaurants in the area where staff had basic sign knowledge, and mentioned that the hotel unfortunately didn't have visual alert systems for room service or emergencies, something I'd brought up to management several times without success. That's valuable information, thank you, Rachel signed, her expressions adding emphasis to her appreciation in the way that makes ASL so rich and nuanced. Most hotels don't think about those details, and most staff certainly don't know to share them. My college roommate was deaf, I explained as I activated her key cards. She taught me how many spaces aren't designed with accessibility in mind. As we conversed, I had a peripheral awareness that our interaction was drawing attention. Several staff members glanced our way, and I noticed a small group of suits observing from near the executive lounge entrance. Great. The corporate evaluation team was probably wondering why I was wildly gesticulating at a guest instead of processing her check-in efficiently. But in that moment, I honestly didn't care. After months of robotic interactions and forced smiles, I was having a genuine human connection. I was using a skill I valued to actually help someone, not just process them through a system. Your room is 842, corner suite with a city view, I signed, sliding the key packet across the counter along with a brief explanation of the hotel amenities and hours. If you need anything during your stay, you can text this number for front desk assistance rather than calling. You've been extraordinarily helpful, Rachel signed, her expression warm. What's your name again? Madison Bailey, I responded, fingers spelling my full name. I'll remember that, Madison Bailey, she signed with a slight smile. People who make the effort to create accessibility deserve recognition. As she gathered her belongings and headed toward the elevators, I felt a small glow of satisfaction that had become increasingly rare in my workday. I'd made an actual difference for someone, however small. That feeling lasted approximately 45 seconds. Madison. Kevin's voice came from behind me, dripping with fake concern. You know we're supposed to maintain our assigned stations unless the duty manager approves a switch. Just looking out for you before Derek notices. I bit back my initial response and simply nodded. Thanks for your concern, Kevin. I'm heading back now. Little did I know, a much more significant conversation about this interaction was already taking place several floors above us. What was that all about? Kevin muttered as I returned to my station. His expression was a poorly disguised mixture of annoyance and curiosity. Just helping a guest, I replied, keeping my tone neutral while focusing on my computer screen. Didn't know you were into charades, he said with a smirk. Very entertaining performance. The suits by the lounge seemed to enjoy the show. I felt a twinge of anxiety, but pushed it aside. I hadn't done anything wrong, quite the opposite. I'd provided better service to a guest who wasn't receiving adequate assistance. American Sign Language isn't charades, Kevin. It's a complete language with its own grammar and syntax, I explained, though I knew the information would bounce right off him. Whatever, he shrugged. Just don't make the rest of us look bad. We can't all be overachievers. The morning continued with its usual rhythm of checkouts and inquiries, but I noticed an unusual undercurrent. Colleagues would glance my way and then quickly look elsewhere when I caught them. Alicia gave me a subtle thumbs up during a quiet moment, but her expression held a hint of concern. Around 11:30, Tom, our duty manager, emerged from his office and made a beeline for my station. My stomach tightened. Tom rarely left his administrative cave unless there was a problem. Madison, he said, his voice low enough that guests couldn't hear, but other staff certainly could. A word when you get a moment. I finished helping my current guest and then stepped aside with him. Is everything okay? I asked. Tom shifted his weight uncomfortably. Look, I appreciate your enthusiasm for customer service. But maybe tone down the showboating a bit. Showboating? I repeated, genuinely confused. The sign language thing, he clarified with an impatient gesture. I know you're trying to stand out, especially with corporate visitors around, but it made Kevin uncomfortable. You essentially took over his guest. I felt heat rising in my face. Kevin was struggling to communicate with a deaf guest. I have a skill that helped resolve the situation efficiently. How is that showboating? Tom sighed the sigh of middle managers everywhere, the sound of someone passing down directives they didn't create and possibly didn't agree with. Just stick to protocol, Madison. If you see a situation like that again, notify the duty manager and we'll handle it appropriately. And how exactly would you have handled it? I challenged, my frustration overriding my usual workplace diplomacy. Would you have called an interpreter for a simple check-in? Or just continued letting the guests struggle to communicate basic needs? Tom's expression hardened. That's enough. Just remember who signs your performance reviews. With that, he walked away, leaving me simmering with indignation. The interaction had confirmed what I'd long suspected. Initiative was discouraged unless it followed the precise channels of corporate hierarchy. During lunch break, I sat alone in the staff room, still processing the conversation with Tom, when Alicia slid into the chair across from me. "That was pretty amazing what you did this morning," she said, voice low. "Apparently not everyone thinks so," I replied, stabbing at my salad. "Forget Tom. He's just a messenger boy for Derek." She leaned closer. "But you should know, that interaction got noticed. By important people." I paused mid-bite. "What do you mean? Those suits by the executive lounge?" "That was Richard Davis, the regional operations director. And I'm pretty sure one of the women with him was Catherine Montgomery." I nearly choked. "The CEO? Why would the CEO of Meridian International be in our lobby watching check-ins?" Alicia shrugged. "Annual property inspections? Strategic restructuring? Who knows? But they were definitely watching your sign language exchange with serious interest." Great. So not only had I irritated my immediate supervisors, but I'd potentially made a spectacle of myself in front of the company's highest executives. This day just kept getting better. The afternoon dragged on with an increasing sense of dread. Kevin had apparently spread the word about my reprimand, as several colleagues gave me sympathetic glances throughout the shift. By 4:30, I was counting the minutes until I could escape. Then, 15 minutes before the end of my shift, my phone pinged with a message from Janet in HR. "Please come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock before your regular shift. Matter to discuss." My heart sank. HR involvement usually meant one of three things: policy updates, conflicts between employees, or termination. Given the day's events, I had a sinking feeling it wasn't about updated vacation policies. I spent my commute home replaying the morning's interaction. Had I actually violated some protocol? Was using ASL somehow against company policy? It seemed absurd, but corporate environments often operated on absurd, unwritten rules. That evening, I called my mother as I prepared a simple dinner of pasta and pre-made sauce, the kind of inexpensive meal that had become my standard as I tried to stretch my paycheck. "You did the right thing, sweetie," Mom assured me after I explained the situation. "If they can't see the value in what you did, that's their short-sightedness." Maybe, I sighed, stirring the pasta more aggressively than necessary. But their short-sightedness signs my paychecks. And with the restructuring rumors. "Madison Bailey," my mother said firmly, using her full name means business voice. "You've always done things your own way, even when it's harder. Remember when you insisted on taking that linguistics minor instead of business courses? Everyone said it was impractical, but it was what you loved. And now it's what made you stand out today." "Standing out isn't always a good thing, Mom. In a world full of people competing to be the same, being different is your superpower," she countered. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you for using your abilities to help someone." Her confidence warmed me, but did little to quiet my anxiety as I lay in bed that night, imagining worst-case scenarios. My mind kept returning to the mountain of student debt, the rising cost of my apartment, my mother's medical bills. I couldn't afford to lose this job, however unfulfilling it might be. By the time my alarm rang the next morning, I had barely slept. I dressed with particular care in my most professional outfit, applied extra concealer to the shadows under my eyes, and arrived at the hotel 30 minutes before my HR appointment. Whatever was coming, I would face it with dignity, even if that meant cleaning out my desk afterward. The HR office at Meridian Seattle occupied a small corner of the administrative floor, a bland, beige space that perfectly reflected its function of processing human complexity into standardized forms and policies. Janet Mitchell, our HR director, had worked for the company for 27 years and had the carefully neutral expression of someone who had seen every workplace drama imaginable without being personally moved by any of it. I'd only been in this office twice before, once during my initial hiring and once when I'd requested information about tuition reimbursement for a hospitality management certificate program. The request had been denied due to budget limitations. This morning, the familiar knot of anxiety tightened as I knocked on Janet's door precisely at 9 a.m. "Come in," called a voice, but not Janet's. I pushed open the door to find not only Janet behind her desk, but also David Westfield, the regional manager, sitting in one of the visitor chairs. My heart plummeted. "You didn't bring in regional management for a simple warning or policy clarification." "Madison, thank you for coming in early," Janet said with her practiced HR smile. "Please have a seat." I lowered myself into the remaining chair, resisting the urge to immediately ask if I was being fired. Best to let them control the narrative and preserve what dignity I could. "I believe you've met David Westfield before," Janet continued. I nodded, extending my hand. "Yes, during the regional conference last year." "Good to see you again, Mr. Westfield." David shook my hand with unexpected warmth. "Please call me David. And it's good to see you as well, especially after yesterday's impressive display." I blinked, thrown off by his positive tone. "Sir?" Janet cleared her throat. "Madison, we asked you here to discuss an incident that occurred yesterday morning involving a deaf guest." Here it came. I straightened my shoulders slightly, preparing for the impact. "Specifically," David continued, "we wanted to discuss how your interaction with Elaine Winters has opened our eyes to significant gaps in our customer service approach." I struggled to follow the conversation's unexpected direction. "I'm sorry, Elaine Winters?" The guest's name was Rachel. Janet and David exchanged glances. "Ah," David said. "That explains part of the situation. Elaine Winters is not actually a regular guest, Madison. She's a consultant specializing in accessibility and customer experience evaluation. She was hired by our CEO, Catherine Montgomery, to assess service quality across all Meridian properties." My mind raced to catch up. "She was an undercover evaluator." "Essentially, yes," Janet confirmed. "Ms. Winters is deaf, but she's also the founder of Inclusive Spaces Consulting. She conducts covert evaluations to help companies identify accessibility gaps in their customer experience." And, David added, leaning forward slightly, "what makes this particularly significant is that Catherine Montgomery herself was observing the interaction from the executive lounge. She had specifically come to our property with Elaine as part of this evaluation process." The room seemed to tilt slightly as the implications hit me. "So the CEO of Meridian watched me use sign language with a consultant she had hired to test our accessibility practices." "Exactly," David said. "And your authentic response made quite an impression, particularly in contrast to the less successful attempt by your colleague." I remained silent, still trying to process this complete reversal of what I'd expected from this meeting. Janet opened a folder on her desk. Catherine was apparently quite struck by several elements of the interaction. First, that you recognized a guest in need without being prompted. Second, that you took initiative to solve the problem directly rather than escalating it through channels, which would have created further delays for the guest. And third, that you provided information about accessibility features beyond what was required for basic service. In other words, David summarized, you demonstrated exactly the kind of customer-centered thinking that Catherine has been trying to instill throughout the organization. My bewilderment must have been evident, as Janet's expression softened slightly. "I understand this is unexpected, Madison, especially given some of the feedback you received yesterday from your direct management." That was a diplomatic way of referring to Tom's reprimand. "To be honest, I thought I was being called in here to be disciplined or terminated," I admitted. David actually chuckled at this. "Quite the opposite. In fact, Catherine specifically asked about you after the evaluation. When she learned that you've been with us for 5 years without advancement despite your obvious talents, she was, let's say, concerned about our talent development practices." Janet nodded. Which brings us to the purpose of this meeting. Madison, we would like to offer you a newly created position, Accessibility Training Coordinator for Meridian Hotels. I stared at them, certain I had misheard. I'm sorry, what? Catherine has fast-tracked a new initiative focused on making Meridian the industry leader in accessible hospitality, David explained. The interaction she witnessed yesterday convinced her that most of our staff lack the training and awareness to properly serve guests with disabilities. She wants someone who understands both hospitality operations and accessibility, needs to develop and implement training programs across all properties. And she thinks that person should be me. I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. Your background in linguistics, your demonstrated skill with ASL, and your 5 years of operational experience make you uniquely qualified, Janet said. Plus, Catherine was impressed by your genuine approach. As she put it, that young woman didn't help because it was policy. She helped because she saw a human need and had the skills to address it. That's exactly the mindset she wants leading this initiative. My mind was spinning with questions. But I don't have management experience. Your team has turned me down twice for assistant manager positions because of that very reason. David had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Sometimes our standardized promotion pathways miss identifying specialized talents. This situation has highlighted that problem as well. Janet slid a document across the desk. This is the formal job offer. The position would be based at corporate headquarters in Chicago, reporting directly to the Vice President of Guest Experience. The salary is, she pointed to a figure that made my eyes widen, along with relocation assistance and the standard corporate benefits package. The number was more than double my current salary. Enough to pay down my student loans, secure a comfortable apartment, and provide proper care for my mother. This is overwhelming, I managed. We understand it's a significant change, David acknowledged. You would need to relocate, and the responsibilities would be substantially different from your current role. But Catherine believes you have exactly the perspective needed to make this initiative successful. How soon would you need my decision? I asked, still struggling to process everything. We can give you 48 hours to consider, Janet replied. Catherine is eager to launch this initiative quickly, but we understand you'll need time to think about the relocation aspects. I nodded, my mind already racing through the implications, moving to Chicago, leaving my mother, stepping into a corporate role I had no experience with. One more thing, David added. Catherine would like to meet with you personally once you've made your decision, regardless of what that decision is. She was quite impressed and wants to thank you either way. As I left the HR office clutching the job offer folder, the hotel corridors seemed different somehow, as if I was seeing them from a new perspective. The same walls, the same carpet, but suddenly they were just a backdrop to a future I hadn't imagined possible 20 minutes ago. All because I had greeted a visitor in sign language, never suspecting the CEO was watching. I spent the remainder of that morning in a daze, mechanically performing my front desk duties while my mind raced through the implications of the job offer. After lunch, Derek called me into his office. Apparently, he'd been briefed on the situation and his demeanor had undergone a remarkable transformation. The manager who had criticized my lack of enthusiasm yesterday was now falling over himself to congratulate me on this well-deserved opportunity. We always knew you had tremendous potential, Madison, he said with a sincerity that would have been more convincing if he hadn't passed me over for promotion twice. The team will certainly miss your contributions, but we're all thrilled for you. I thanked him politely, marveling at how quickly workplace dynamics could shift. By mid-afternoon, word had spread throughout the hotel. Colleagues who had barely spoken to me in 5 years suddenly found reasons to pass by the front desk and offer congratulations. Kevin alone maintained his distance, his expression a mixture of confusion and resentment. Only Alicia's reaction felt genuine. She hugged me tightly during our break, her excitement palpable. This is incredible, Madison. A corporate position created just for you? And reporting to a VP? That's practically unheard of. It doesn't feel real, I admit it. Yesterday, I was being reprimanded for helping a guest, and today they're offering me a job I never applied for with a salary I can barely comprehend. Because you did something authentic in a business that rewards phoniness, Alicia said. You saw a person, not a transaction. That matters. But am I qualified for this? I voiced the doubt that had been growing steadily since the meeting. I've never created training programs. I've never managed people. What if I'm in over my head? Alicia fixed me with a serious look. Madison Bailey, you've been speaking up about accessibility issues since I've known you. How many times have you suggested improvements that got ignored? How many emails have you sent about adding visual alerts for deaf guests or improving signage for those with visual impairments? She had a point. I'd been advocating for these changes for years, usually to be told they weren't cost-effective or aligned with current priorities. And that's with zero institutional support, Alicia continued. Imagine what you could do with actual resources and executive backing. As my shift ended, I found another message waiting for me, this one from Catherine Montgomery's executive assistant, confirming that the CEO would be available to meet with me the following afternoon, should I wish to discuss the position further. The surreal nature of the situation intensified. 24 hours ago, I had been an overlooked front desk agent. Now the CEO of a global hotel chain wanted to personally meet with me. I spent the evening in my apartment, spreading the job offer documents across my small dining table. The salary was breathtaking, enough to transform my financial reality overnight. The benefits package included comprehensive health insurance, retirement matching, and even tuition reimbursement for continuing education. The relocation package would cover all moving expenses and provide temporary housing while I settled in Chicago. But Chicago was nearly 2,000 miles from Seattle. From my mother. That thought propelled me to grab my keys and drive the familiar route to her modest one-bedroom apartment. I found her watching her favorite game show, her arthritic hands working on a crochet project despite the pain I knew each movement caused. "This is an incredible opportunity, sweetie," she said after I explained the situation. "But I can see you're torn. How can I leave you here alone?" The question that had been circling in my mind finally emerged. "Your arthritis isn't getting better, and the doctor said you might need hip replacement surgery next year." My mother set down her crochet work and fixed me with the determined look I knew so well, the same expression she'd worn when working double shifts to keep us afloat after my father left. "Madison, I didn't sacrifice to raise you so you could sacrifice your future to care for me. That's not how this works. But your medical needs will be much better addressed if my daughter has a corporate job with excellent health benefits," she finished firmly. "Besides, with what they're offering to pay you, you could fly me out to Chicago for treatments if necessary. Or fly back here regularly." She reached for my hand, her fingers gnarled but strong. "The question isn't whether you should take this job. The question is whether you're going to let fear stop you from becoming everything you're capable of being." As I drove home later that night, my mother's words echoed in my mind. She was right about the fear. Beyond the practical concerns about relocation and new responsibilities lurked a deeper anxiety, the fear of stepping into a role I hadn't earned through traditional channels, of being exposed as inadequate, of failing publicly after such a miraculous opportunity. Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and began researching corporate accessibility initiatives, trying to understand the scope of what this new role might entail. I found myself taking notes, already mapping out potential approaches and priorities. Despite my anxiety, ideas flowed easily, perhaps because I'd been mentally cataloging these issues for years without an outlet to address them. Around midnight, I received a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Bailey, this is Elaine Winters. Hope you don't mind. I got your number from your colleague Alicia. I wanted to personally apologize for the undercover evaluation and to tell you how impressed I was with your genuine assistance yesterday. If you'd like to discuss the accessibility coordinator role, I'd be happy to share my insights as a consultant in this space." The text was followed by another, "And yes, I am actually deaf." That part wasn't an act, smiley face. This unexpected connection reinforced what Alicia had said about authenticity. In a moment when I hadn't known I was being evaluated, when I had simply responded to a human need with the skills I possessed, I had inadvertently changed the trajectory of my career. The next morning, I called Janet in HR and requested the meeting with Catherine Montgomery. Whatever doubts I had, I owed it to myself to explore this opportunity fully before making a decision. That afternoon, I found myself in one of the hotel's executive suites, waiting nervously to meet the CEO of Meridian International. I had chosen my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit I'd purchased for interviews and special corporate events. It had seemed adequate this morning, but now, surrounded by the luxury of the executive suite, I felt distinctly underdressed. The door opened and Catherine Montgomery entered. She was shorter than I'd expected from the magazine profiles I'd hurriedly read last night, perhaps 5 feet 4 inches, but she carried herself with unmistakable authority. In her mid-50s, with silver streaks in her dark hair that she made no attempt to disguise, she projected confidence without intimidation. "Madison Bailey," she said warmly, extending her hand. "I'm delighted to finally meet you properly." "The pleasure is mine, Ms. Montgomery," I replied, hoping my nervousness wasn't evident in my handshake. "Please call me Catherine. And let's sit somewhere comfortable rather than across a formal desk." She gestured to a seating area by the window overlooking the Seattle skyline. As we settled into the armchairs, I noticed she positioned herself so the light didn't cast shadows on her face, a subtle consideration that made lip-reading easier, should it be necessary. "I imagine the past 24 hours have been quite surprising for you," she began. "That would be an understatement," I admitted with a small laugh. "Yesterday I was worried about being reprimanded, and today I'm meeting with the CEO." Catherine smiled. "Life's most significant turns often come when we least expect them." She leaned forward slightly. "Madison, do you know why I created this accessibility initiative?" "To improve service for guests with disabilities," I offered, giving the obvious answer. "That's the business rationale, yes. But my personal motivation runs deeper." She reached for her phone, scrolled briefly, then turned it to show me a photo of a young woman with Catherine's eyes and smile. "This is my sister, Elizabeth. She was born with profound hearing loss. Growing up, I watched her navigate a world that wasn't designed with her in mind, constantly adapting, constantly working harder than everyone else just to access the same experiences." I looked at the photo with new understanding. "That must have been challenging for both of you." It was. But it also taught me something valuable about the world and about business. When we design spaces and experiences only for the majority, we not only exclude people like my sister, we miss opportunities to create better experiences for everyone. She put the phone away. "The truth is, accessibility isn't charity or compliance. It's good business and basic human decency." Her passion was evident, and I found myself nodding in agreement. I've thought the same thing many times. Small changes could make such a difference in how people experience our properties. Exactly. And when I saw you communicating fluently with Elaine while everyone else fumbled, I realized something important was missing from our corporate strategy. We need someone who intuitively understands both hospitality operations and accessibility needs, someone who doesn't just see policies, but sees people. She fixed me with a direct gaze. "The question is, are you interested in being that person, Madison? I won't pretend it would be easy. You'd be building a program from the ground up. There would be resistance from those who see accessibility as a cost center rather than a competitive advantage. You'd need to influence people with far more experience and seniority." I appreciated her honesty. "I have concerns about my qualifications," I admitted. "I've never held a management role, never developed corporate training programs." "Skills can be taught. Perspective is harder to cultivate," Catherine replied. "I have plenty of MBAs and hospitality veterans at my disposal. What I need is someone who inherently understands why this matters and has the passion to drive change even when it's difficult." She paused, studying me thoughtfully. "Tell me this. If you took this role, what would your first priorities be?" The question caught me off guard, but I found myself answering without hesitation, drawing on the research I'd done overnight and the observations I'd gathered over 5 years. I'd start by conducting a comprehensive accessibility audit across all properties, not just physical spaces, but service protocols, digital interfaces, and communication channels. Then I'd develop targeted training modules for different departments, focusing first on frontline staff who have the most guest interaction. The ideas continued to flow as I outlined my vision for inclusive design principles, staff certification in basic accessibility skills, and partnerships with organizations representing various disability communities. Catherine listened intently, occasionally nodding. When I finally ran out of steam, she smiled. That's exactly why you're the right person for this role, Madison. You've clearly been thinking about these issues for years, even without the authority to implement changes. She stood, moving toward the window. I won't pressure you for an answer today. This decision involves significant life changes, and you should consider it carefully. But I will tell you this. Talent and perspective like yours are rare in corporate environments. If you want this opportunity, it's yours. As our meeting concluded, Catherine handed me her business card with her direct contact information. Whatever you decide, I'd like to hear from you personally. I left the suite with my mind spinning, but my heart increasingly clear about the decision before me. That evening, I called my mother again, this time using video chat, so I could see her face as I recounted my meeting with Catherine Montgomery. She sounds remarkable, Mom said when I finished. The kind of leader who actually deserves loyalty. She is, I agreed. But I still don't know if I'm ready for this kind of responsibility. What if I fail spectacularly and end up unemployed in a city where I know no one? My mother laughed softly. Oh, honey, that's not the Madison Bailey I raised. Since when do you shy away from challenges? Since the stakes got this high, I admit it. It's one thing to suggest improvements that get ignored. It's another to be given actual power to implement them and then discover I can't deliver. You know who would have great perspective on this? Mom suggested. Your old roommate. Stephanie would understand both the accessibility aspects and your concerns. It was an excellent idea. Despite our geographical distance, Stephanie and I had maintained contact through social media. I sent her a message immediately, and to my surprise, she responded within minutes, suggesting a video call. Seeing her familiar face on my screen, older now than our college days, but with the same bright, expressive eyes, brought a flood of warmth. I explained the situation in a mixture of spoken English and ASL, my signing rusty but improving as we talked. Let me get this straight, Stephanie signed when I finished. You're hesitating about taking a job that would allow you to make hotels more accessible for deaf people and others with disabilities? A job created because you naturally did the right thing when most people wouldn't bother. Put that way, my hesitation did seem absurd. I'm not sure I have the expertise, I signed back. No one starts with expertise, she countered. What matters is commitment to learning and authentic representation. She leaned closer to the camera. Madison, do you know how rare it is for companies to put someone who actually understands disability culture in charge of accessibility initiatives? Usually, they hire compliance officers who've never experienced accessibility barriers firsthand or through close relationships. She continued, her signing passionate and emphatic. If you take this job, you won't just be advancing your career. You'll be changing how an entire hotel chain thinks about accessibility. That affects thousands of travelers. We talked for nearly 2 hours, with Stephanie offering practical advice about approaches to accessibility training and suggesting organizations I could partner with. By the time we said goodbye, my perspective had shifted dramatically. The next morning, I woke with unexpected clarity. Instead of anxiety, I felt a growing sense of purpose. This wasn't just a job offer, it was an opportunity to address issues I'd cared about for years. And while I might not have all the qualifications on paper, I had something equally valuable. Authentic understanding and genuine commitment. I spent the day researching corporate accessibility initiatives more thoroughly, taking detailed notes on best practices and potential approaches. I read case studies of companies that had successfully implemented inclusive design principles and the business benefits they'd realized. The more I learned, the more excited I became about the possibilities. That afternoon, before my scheduled shift, I returned to the HR office where Janet and David were waiting expectantly. I'd like to accept the position, I told them, my voice steady and confident. With one condition. They exchanged glances. What condition? David asked. My mother has health issues that require ongoing care. I need assurance that the relocation package will include provisions for her as well, either to move with me or to receive adequate support here in Seattle. I decided this was non-negotiable. No matter how exciting the opportunity, I wouldn't abandon my mother's well-being. To my surprise, Janet nodded immediately. Catherine anticipated this concern. The package includes family relocation support or, alternatively, regular travel allowances to visit family members with health needs. We can work out the specifics based on what would best serve your mother's situation. The last barrier removed, I signed the offer letter. Within minutes, Janet had emailed Catherine, who requested I come to her suite immediately. When I arrived, Catherine greeted me with genuine warmth. "I'm delighted you've accepted, Madison. I believe we're about to make Meridian a leader in accessible hospitality." "Thank you for this opportunity," I said. "I promise I'll work tirelessly to make this initiative successful." "I have no doubt." She gestured for me to sit. "Now, I'd like to hear more about your initial thoughts for the program. Consider this our first strategy session." For the next hour, we discussed approaches to accessibility training, potential property modifications, and ways to authentically engage with disability communities. Catherine listened attentively, occasionally offering insights from her business perspective, but clearly valuing my ideas. "Your perspective is exactly what we've been missing," she said as our meeting concluded. Too often, companies approach accessibility as a compliance checkbox rather than an opportunity to create better experiences for all guests. As I prepared to leave, she added, "I've scheduled a meeting next week with the executive team to introduce you and outline the initiative. It would be valuable if you could attend, perhaps fly to Chicago for a few days to get acquainted with headquarters." The speed at which my life was changing was dizzying, but I found myself nodding eagerly. I'd be honored. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activity. HR arranged for my temporary absence from the front desk while I prepared for the transition. Derek, suddenly aware that I'd soon be working directly with his corporate superiors, became almost comically helpful. Kevin maintained a sullen distance, while Alicia helped me prepare for my Chicago trip with enthusiastic support. The hotel staff gathered for an impromptu farewell celebration on my last regular workday. Standing amid colleagues who had barely acknowledged me for years, I reflected on how dramatically circumstances could change from a single interaction. My mother decided to relocate with me to Chicago, her medical specialists confirming that equivalent care could be arranged there. The relief of knowing she would be nearby lifted an enormous weight from my shoulders. The most unexpected development came 3 days before my Chicago trip, when I received an email from Elaine Winters inviting me to lunch. We met at a small restaurant near the hotel, where she greeted me with fluent sign language. "I feel partially responsible for your career upheaval," she signed with a smile after we ordered. "The least I can do is offer some professional insights." Over the meal, Elaine shared her extensive experience consulting on accessibility initiatives. Her perspective as a deaf professional who had navigated countless inaccessible spaces provided invaluable context for the work ahead. "The most common mistake companies make," she advised, "is implementing changes without ongoing input from the communities they're trying to serve. Token consultation isn't enough. You need sustained engagement." As we parted, she handed me her business card. "I have a feeling we'll be working together again. Catherine has contracted my firm to assist with the initial property audits." By the time I boarded the plane to Chicago the following week, my anxiety had transformed into determination. I carried with me a comprehensive presentation I developed for the executive team, outlining my vision for making Meridian an industry leader in accessible hospitality. Standing before the executives in their sleek boardroom, I found myself speaking with unexpected confidence. These seasoned business leaders might have decades more experience, but I had perspective they needed, an understanding of how small changes could transform the guest experience for millions of travelers. Accessibility isn't just about compliance, I concluded after presenting my initial framework. It's about creating environments where all guests can experience the same quality of service and comfort. It's about recognizing that inclusive design benefits everyone, not just those with disclosed disabilities. And ultimately, it's about building brand loyalty through genuine commitment to equal access. The applause that followed, led by Catherine herself, confirmed that I had found my voice and my purpose. As we filed out of the boardroom, Several executives approached with questions and ideas, their engagement genuine. Catherine lingered until the others had departed. "That," she said with evident satisfaction, "is exactly why I created this position for you. You've just changed how our executive team thinks about accessibility. And this is only the beginning." In that moment, I realized I had crossed a threshold. The transformation wasn't just in my title or salary, but in my understanding of my own potential. All because I had greeted a deaf visitor in sign language, never suspecting the CEO was watching. 6 months later, I stood at a podium in Meridian's largest conference room, addressing the company's regional managers gathered for quarterly training. Behind me, a slide displayed our new accessibility certification program logo, a design created in collaboration with artists from various disability communities. "The results from our first 3 months are clear," I explained, highlighting key metrics on the screen. "Properties that have implemented our accessibility initiatives have seen a 12% increase in positive reviews, specifically mentioning inclusive accommodations. More importantly, we've received over 200 personal messages from guests who felt truly welcomed, often for the first time in their travel experiences." The transformation of Meridian's approach to accessibility had moved faster than even Catherine had anticipated. My initial property audits had revealed numerous opportunities for improvement, from simple signage changes to more substantial modifications of physical spaces. But the most significant impact came from the staff training programs we'd developed. Working with Elaine's consulting firm and several disability advocacy organizations, we'd created comprehensive training modules for every department, not just theoretical education, but practical skills development. Front desk staff learned basic ASL greetings and communication techniques. Housekeeping teams were trained to maintain specific arrangements for guests with visual impairments or mobility needs. Food service staff received guidance on accommodating dietary restrictions with dignity rather than inconvenience. The corporate culture shift had been remarkable. What began as a compliance exercise had evolved into a genuine commitment to accessibility as a core brand value. Employees across properties were now proactively suggesting improvements based on guest interactions and personal observations. Next month, I announced to the assembled managers, we'll be launching our Accessibility Ambassador program, identifying staff members at each property who demonstrate particular aptitude for inclusive service. These ambassadors will receive specialized training and serve as on-site resources for colleagues and guests. As the presentation concluded and managers broke into workshop groups, Catherine approached from the back of the room where she had been observing. "You've accomplished more in 6 months than most initiatives achieve in years," she said, her pride evident. "It helps to have executive backing," I acknowledged. "Your support has cleared bureaucratic hurdles that might have taken months to navigate otherwise." "Support only matters when there's someone capable of using it effectively," she countered. "You've built something remarkable here, Madison." Indeed, my role had expanded considerably from its initial scope. What began as a training coordination position had evolved into leadership of Meridian's entire accessibility strategy. I now managed a small but dedicated team, with budget authority and direct reporting lines to Catherine. The personal transformations had been equally significant. My mother had settled comfortably into a ground-floor apartment in my Chicago building, her medical care seamlessly transferred to specialists affiliated with the University Medical Center. Her arthritis was responding well to a new treatment protocol that hadn't been available in Seattle. Financially, the change had been life-altering. My student loans, once a constant source of anxiety, were now on an accelerated repayment schedule. I had established my first retirement account and even started a modest investment portfolio. The constant worry about making ends meet had lifted, allowing me to focus my energy on work that genuinely mattered. Perhaps most meaningful was the network of relationships I'd built through this role. Elaine Winters had become both a valued colleague and personal friend. Our initial collaboration had expanded into regular advisory sessions, where her perspective as a deaf professional helped ensure our initiatives remained authentic rather than performative. Catherine had evolved from intimidating CEO to respected mentor, providing guidance on navigating corporate politics and developing executive presence. Her sister Elizabeth had even joined one of our focus groups, offering candid feedback about hotel experiences from a deaf traveler's perspective. Most unexpectedly, I had reconnected with Stephanie in a professional capacity. When searching for a consultant to help develop digital accessibility standards for our booking platforms, I had remembered that Stephanie worked in UX design. Now her firm was contracted as a key partner in our digital accessibility initiative. After the regional manager training concluded, I returned to my office to find an email from Rachel, the name Elaine had used during her undercover evaluation. She had forwarded a message from a deaf family who had recently stayed at our Seattle property, describing their experience as the first truly inclusive hotel stay we've ever had. The message concluded, "The staff member who helped us check in new basic sign language and immediately connected us with their accessibility liaison." For once, we didn't have to work twice as hard just to access the same services as everyone else. Please thank whoever is responsible for this change. I smiled, remembering the anxious front desk agent I had been just 6 months earlier, worried about overstepping boundaries by using ASL with a guest. How dramatically life could change from a single authentic interaction. Later that evening, as I prepared materials for the next day's executive review, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The transformation wasn't just in my professional role or financial situation. It was in my understanding of how change happens in organizations and in the world. Sometimes, the most powerful catalyst isn't strategic planning or formal initiatives, but simply bringing your authentic self to everyday interactions. My small act of using sign language with a guest had revealed a gap in our service model that executives might never have recognized otherwise. My genuine interest in accessibility had provided perspective that business metrics alone couldn't capture. I thought of all the front desk agents, servers, housekeepers, and other hotel staff across our properties who might have unique skills and perspectives that remained untapped. How many languages were spoken? How many cultural insights existed? How many innovative ideas were never voiced because no one had created space for authentic contribution? This reflection shaped my next initiative, a program to identify and develop hidden talents throughout the organization, creating pathways for staff at all levels to contribute their unique perspectives and abilities. True inclusion, I had learned, wasn't just about making physical spaces accessible or providing specialized services. It was about recognizing the full humanity and potential of every person, guests, and employees alike. It was about creating environments where everyone could bring their whole selves to each interaction. As I closed my laptop and prepared to head home, my phone pinged with a message from Catherine, board approved full funding for next year's accessibility initiatives. Your presentation made the difference. This is just the beginning. I smiled, knowing she was right. This was just the beginning, not just for Meridian's accessibility journey, but for my own understanding of how one authentic moment could create ripples that transform entire systems. So, what small act of authenticity might you bring to your next interaction? What unique perspective or ability might you share that could spark unexpected change? The world needs your genuine voice and skills more than you might realize. If my story has taught me anything, it's that you never know who might be watching when you simply do the right thing, and how that single moment of authenticity might open doors you never imagined possible. I'd love to hear your stories of how small acts made big differences in your life or career. Drop them in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this reminder of how powerful authentic connection can be. Thank you for joining me on this unexpected path. I'm grateful for each of you.